Turning criticism into growth. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something we've all experienced. Criticism. It's uncomfortable, it stings, and let's be honest, sometimes it feels unfair. But what if I told you that criticism, when handled right, can become one of your greatest tools for growth? Criticism is not the enemy. It's a mirror, sometimes clean, sometimes cracked, but always reflecting something we can learn. Whether it comes from a teacher, a boss, a peer, or even from within, it offers a chance to pause, reflect, and improve. But there's a choice we must make. We can either let criticism discourage us, or we can let it shape us. Turning criticism into growth means developing a mindset that sees feedback as fuel, not fire. It means filtering what's helpful, discarding what's harmful, and learning to separate our work from our worth. It's not easy. It requires humility, resilience, and emotional maturity. But when we respond with curiosity instead of defensiveness, we unlock potential we didn't know we had. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more growing people. So the next time criticism comes your way, take a breath and ask, what can I learn from this? That question is the beginning of growth. Criticism is inevitable no matter who you are, what you do, how well you do it. Criticism is a part of life. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're at the peak of your career. Sooner or later, someone will have something to say about your work, your choices, or even your character. That's the reality of living in a world filled with different opinions, expectations, and perspectives. From the time we're young, we're introduced to feedback, parents telling us how to behave, teachers correcting our homework, coaches pushing us to improve. As we grow older, criticism takes on new form. It might come from a boss questioning your approach, a colleague offering unsolicited advice, a customer leaving a harsh review, or even a stranger online passing judgment. It's everywhere, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Recognizing that criticism is unavoidable is the first step to disarming its power over us. Many people waste valuable time and energy trying to avoid criticism entirely. They play it safe, silence their voice, and shrink their ambitions just to stay in the comfort zone where no one can judge them. But that zone is not where growth happens. In fact, the only people who are never criticized are usually the ones who never take action. As the saying goes, if you're not being criticized, you're probably not doing much that matters. Instead of fearing criticism, we must come to accept it as an indicator that we are showing up, that we are trying, experimenting, speaking up, and stepping into the arena. The presence of criticism often means that we are stretching beyond the familiar, which is exactly where growth begins. So rather than asking, how do I avoid criticism, a better question is, how can I face it in a way that fuels my development? Because while criticism may be inevitable, how we respond to it is entirely within our control. Shift your mindset. The way we perceive criticism has everything to do with how it affects us. At its core, criticism is neutral. It's simply information, an opinion or observation offered by someone else. But how we interpret that information can make all the difference. Some see criticism as a threat, a sign of failure, or even a personal attack. Others see it as feedback, a tool for improvement, and an invitation to grow. The difference between these two responses lies not in the criticism itself, but in the mindset of the person receiving it. Shifting your mindset means choosing to view criticism as a constructive force rather than a destructive one. It's about reprogramming your internal narrative from "they're tearing me down" to "they're showing me something I may not have noticed." This doesn't mean that all criticism is helpful or kind. It isn't. But it does mean that we have the power to reframe the experience and decide what we want to take from it. With the right mindset, even negative or poorly delivered feedback can be transformed into a lesson. For example, a harsh remark about your presentation skills could either crush your confidence or prompt you to invest in public speaking practice, ultimately making you stronger. In this way, criticism becomes a catalyst for growth, not an obstacle to avoid. This shift also requires letting go of the need to be perfect. Perfectionism makes us fear criticism because it equates mistakes with inadequacy. But when we adopt a growth mindset, as psychologist Carol Dweck describes it, we start to see mistakes and feedback as essential parts of the learning process. We stop asking, am I good enough? And start asking, how can I get better? Ultimately, shifting your mindset is about choosing to be open rather than defensive. It's about turning down the volume of ego and turning up the volume of curiosity. When we approach criticism with a genuine desire to understand and evolve, we transform it from a source of pain into a source of power. separate identity from feedback, one of the biggest obstacles to accepting criticism constructively is the tendency to take it personally. When someone points out a flaw in our work, a mistake in our actions, or an area we can improve, it can feel like a direct attack on who we are. But in truth, there's a critical distinction between what we do and who we are. And learning to separate the two is essential for personal and professional growth. Our work, our ideas, our performances, they are the expressions of ourselves, but they are not our entire identity. If we see them as inseparable from our self-worth, then any critique of those things will feel like a rejection of our value as a person. That's why criticism can sometimes hurt more than it should. It strikes at the ego, not just the effort. But when we develop the emotional maturity to step back and say, this feedback is about something I did, not who I am, we create space for learning rather than shame. This separation is not about dismissing the feedback or distancing ourselves from accountability. On the contrary, it's about creating a healthy boundary that allows us to evaluate the criticism objectively. When we're not emotionally entangled with the feedback, we can look at it more rationally. Is this accurate? Is there truth here I can use? Is this helping me grow? That process becomes much harder if we are feeling attacked or diminished. Think of it like an artist displaying a painting. If someone critiques the art, they are not critiquing the soul of the artist. They are responding to the piece, which is just one representation of the artist's work. In the same way, your job performance, your writing, your ideas, your decisions, they are all things you've produced, not the sum total of who you are. Building this separation takes practice. It means nurturing self-awareness and a solid sense of self-worth that doesn't crumble every time you're told you missed the mark. It means learning to detach emotionally from the outcome long enough to extract value from the feedback. It means reminding yourself that growth thrives in a mindset where learning is more important than approval. When you can confidently say that this feedback doesn't define me, but it can help refine me, you're no longer trapped by defensiveness or fear. Instead, you're free to improve, evolve, and become the best version of yourself without losing your sense of who you already are. Evaluate the source. Not all criticism is created equal. One of the most important skills in turning criticism into growth is learning to evaluate where the feedback is coming from. In a world filled with opinions, some well-meaning, some careless, and some deliberately unkind, it's essential to develop the ability to discern between valuable input and noise. When you receive criticism, the first question you should ask yourself is, who is this person to me? Do they have experience or knowledge in the area they're criticizing? Do they understand the context? Do they have your growth and success in mind? Or are they reacting from bias, jealousy, misunderstanding, or even insecurity? Constructive criticism usually comes from individuals who have credibility, context, and care. That might be a mentor who wants to see you improve, a colleague with relevant expertise, or a teacher who knows your potential. Their feedback may be tough, but it's rooted in a desire to help you grow. These are the voices worth listening to, even when their words are hard to hear. On the other hand, uninformed or toxic criticism, such as a vague comment from a stranger online or a cutting remark from someone who has never walked in your shoes, needs to be filtered. That doesn't mean dismissing everything outright, but it does mean placing feedback in context. Does this person truly understand my goals, values, or the effort behind my work? If the answer is no, then their opinion should carry far less weight. Evaluating the source also helps protect your emotional energy. Taking every piece of criticism to heart can leave you drained, anxious, and second-guessing yourself constantly. But when you become intentional about whose feedback you internalize, you gain clarity. You start to see feedback as something you can choose to engage with, not something that controls you. Additionally, remember that sometimes helpful criticism comes from unexpected places, and even those who aren't experts can offer perspective that prompts reflection. But the key is to balance openness with discernment. Don't shut people out, but don't give every voice the same level of access to your growth journey either. Ultimately, evaluating the source of criticism doesn't mean ignoring others. It means empowering yourself to take in what's useful, question what's irrelevant, and shield yourself from what's harmful. In doing so, you create a healthier, more productive space for growth to flourish. Listen with curiosity, not defensiveness. One of the most instinctive human reactions to criticism is defensiveness. When someone points out a flaw or challenges something we've done, it's natural to want to protect ourselves. We interrupt, justify, deflect, or deny. We might feel hurt, angry, or embarrassed, and those emotions can easily shut down the opportunity to learn. But if we truly want to turn criticism into growth, we must train ourselves to replace defensiveness with curiosity. Curiosity shifts our mindset from a how do I protect myself to a what can I discover here. It opens the door to listening fully without interruption or internal rebuttals. Instead of jumping to conclusions or assuming ill intent, curiosity allows us to ask, oh, why is this person saying this? What can I learn from their perspective? When we approach criticism with curiosity, we give ourselves a chance to grow. Even if the message is hard to hear, this doesn't mean we have to agree with everything that's said. In fact, curiosity isn't about passively accepting all criticism. It's about understanding it first before deciding how to respond. It means listening not just for what is being said, but also why it's being said. Are there patterns in the feedback? Is there a blind spot you weren't aware of? Could there be truth hidden behind the tone? Being curious also communicates maturity and emotional intelligence. When someone gives you feedback, especially when it's uncomfortable, and you respond by asking thoughtful questions like, can you explain what you mean? Or what would improvement look like to you? You're sending a powerful message that you are teachable, open, and focused on progress, not perfection. Curiosity disarms conflict. It slows down reactive emotions and creates room for reflection. It builds stronger relationships by showing others that you're willing to listen, even if you don't agree. And most importantly, it helps you grow by turning each piece of criticism into a source of insight rather than an emotional blow. Cultivating this mindset takes practice. It involves pausing before reacting, checking your emotional responses, and choosing to listen fully, even when your pride is bruised. But over time, this habit of curious listening becomes a powerful skill that sets you apart in both personal and professional spaces. When others retreat into defensiveness, you lean into growth, and that makes all the difference. Criticism, though often uncomfortable, is one of the most powerful tools we have for growth when we approach it with the right mindset. By accepting this inevitability, shifting how we perceive it, and separating it from our sense of identity, we open ourselves up to invaluable learning opportunity. When we evaluate the source, listen with curiosity, extract the useful insights, and apply them with intention, we begin to transform criticism from something we fear into something we leverage. But above all, we must stay resilient. Growth is not always immediate, and change rarely comes without challenge. Yet every piece of criticism, whether big or small, has the potential to shape us into more self-aware, capable, and confident individuals if we let it. So the next time you're faced with criticism, pause, breathe, lean in, and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Because in that moment, you are not just receiving feedback, you are choosing growth.